Welcome back, everyone. It is April of 2020, and after several months of the new patch of the year, the Banana Lance balance team at Blizzard has come up with an update on what we can look forward to, or down upon, or sideways at going forward. Let's summarize. First and foremost, we hope everyone's staying safe. I hope everyone's in their bunkers, making sure they don't do too much stim, and content creators and all that doing useful things, arguably. Thank you, Wardy. First, Terran versus Zerg. Though we had concerns with TvZ in last season's map pool, considering the current maps, the matchup looks healthy from a gameplay and a balance perspective. We're going to hold till the end. After last year's big patch, we saw a steep rise in mech strategies, followed by a steep decline. Though bio is still the most prominent strategy, we're seeing a slight resurgence in mech in the recent months, possibly inspired by some of the new maps. From the Zerg side, mid-game strategies seem very diverse as well, but perhaps most notably, endgame seems to have improved drastically, with Broodlord turtling seeming like a thing of the past, scenarios where both sides fight tooth and nail for small pieces of territory commonplace. Mostly agree. I think every new map pool, Terran players are like, maybe this time mech will work, and usually end up at but mostly agree on that. Yes, there are details. I'd like to see more players use lurkers, but I don't think that's a balance issue. I think that's just players not really exploring as much. Shout out to Raynor. Like, the most exciting game I've seen in months is Raynor playing lurkers. So let's get some more of that. Hold, Terrans. Hold. This is not the balance changes. We're just setting the scene. You can skip forward in the video after you like and subscribe. You can unlock that option. Everybody knows that. Terran versus Protoss. While we view TvP to be relatively even, and games tend to end less abruptly, we still believe there's room for improvement in terms of design. For instance, even though we're seeing fewer games that end abruptly with 2-base tank pushes, a lot of the mid-game gameplay still centers around the threat of this type of push, which tends to lead to one-dimensional mid-games. Any significant changes we'd make to impact this matchup will primarily have the goal of opening it up rather than trying to balance it. So, Terran versus Protoss right now. I do agree with that. It does seem pretty balanced. Especially at the higher levels. I know none of this matters. Like, if you're a Diamond Leaguer, congratulations. Doesn't matter. That's another argument. But when it comes to the professional level, there definitely is a back and forth. I think the better player I guess a good metric is, does the better player usually win? And in TvP and in TvZ, yes. I think yes. I think that's the simplest metric. And now, what makes a better player? Let's not get into that. But I think if there's a clear better player, they usually win in the matchup, though there are upsets possible. And I do agree that every game, like in ZvP last year, it could be like, well, I'm going 1-gate Stargate. 1-gate expand into Stargate. And I could probably cast the game with my eyes closed for 5 minutes. TvP is getting kind of close to that, where it's like, and now he's going to go for 3 tanks. He's going to get +1, and he's going to get stim. And let's see, does he get his 2 barracks and do a later push, or does he go for an earlier push as stim finishes? I don't know. Those are your options. And does the Protoss player screw up his blink micro, or does he actually have enough units to defend? It does, and now that they pointed out, that's very true. Anyway, Zerg versus Protoss. This is the big one. This is the big issue. It might be a little strong, but this is the most hotly contested and discussed matchup. First, the good news. We're seeing a ton of diversity from both sides in the early and mid-game stages. From the Protoss side, we're seeing very many varied openers and small refinements to these openers. And from the Zerg side, we're seeing greater diversity in mid-game unit composition than we've possibly ever seen in the history of Starcraft 2. Alright, now that we're done equivocating. However, we do view this matchup as favoring Zerg, especially in the late game. as evidenced by the lack of late-game PvZ play in recent months. And after talking to professional-level Protoss players, we've identified the most common threads in their complaints about the matchups as a whole. 1. The effectiveness of the Queen. Brenda too good. The efficiency of the Baneling, both as combat and harassment. Fair. They can one-shot and also just straight-up flooding Banes. The inability of clearing creep throughout the mid to late game without necessitating the presence of the entire Protoss army. And the difficulty of late game with a focus on the risk versus reward of the abduct feedback interaction. That's mostly SkyToss related, because it's hard to play SkyToss with like a mothership or carriers or tempests if one Yankee boy comes in and kidnaps you. And now, okay, well, I'll wait till we summarize all. TvT and ZvZ, both these matchups in a good place, with TvT especially notable, with slightly more dynamic games. Agree. There's no, like, this is the build in each of those matchups, but it does still feel like the better player can win, but it's a mirror matchup, so it's a little more volatile. But, what about the kids' table? Protoss versus Protoss, where anyone can beat anyone, which can make for some very exciting matchups. But really, it's more about trying to keep your brain together and understand what's happening rather than dictate the pace of the match. Well, we believe... Wow, there's more text for PvP than anything else. And partially, I think, because it only affects Protoss, so we can be more detailed. Anyways, we believe PvP has two core issues. The volatility of early game and resulting difficulty of holding a natural, and the difficulty of holding a third. So, expanding ever. Ever since the removal of the mothership core and its replacement with the shield battery, we've run into some stability issues with PvP. From what we gather, the current general understanding seems to be that proxy robo builds are extremely strong, to the point of over-centralizing the metagame in the middle of the map. The metagame is centered not in the bases, but in the middle. And that's the issue. This build is also a large part of why holding a natural expansion is so difficult, and the resulting games seem to be so volatile. Another prevalent concern is the ability for Protoss to hold 3 bases. In the past, when the key heavy hitters in PvP were Colossi or Disruptors, the Defender had a significant advantage in that they would have 1 or 2 additional Colossi or Disruptors in their defense due to travel distance. But now that Zealots and Archons are primary mid-game units, with Immortals being much less potent than either Colossi or Disruptors, this travel distance is negated, and the Defender often can't make up this difference when slightly behind. With all of these thoughts in mind, here are some changes we'll be featuring in the next balance test mod to be potentially added to the live game in a future patch. So, if you want to just get to the good stuff, thank you for skipping here. I hope I timestamped this correctly. With all that said. Terran. Widowmine. Drilling Claws upgrade no longer grants Widowmine's invisibility. Instead, the existence of an armory will grant Widowmine's invisibility. While burrowed, I assume, the wording is a little unclear. I mean, this isn't a legal brief. But what if, like, suddenly the Widowmines disappeared? They're just The red laser attachment for Widowmines will now communicate the existence. It already did that before with Drilling Claws. Of an armory instead of the existence of the Drilling Claws upgrade. Terran, first, I'll talk, okay, I'm really gonna try to get through all of the changes and then talk about how they interact. I usually don't make it all the way through, but I'm gonna try. Terran players often talk about feeling economically behind, especially in TvP. While we're open to making changes to Terran economy, a blanket buff is not something we're currently looking at considering the state of TvZ, as well as the planned changes for Zerg. Though TvP economy is a complicated issue, We believe the primary reason for Terrans feeling behind in this matchup are changes made in the transition from Heart of the Swarm to Legacy of the Void. Some key changes include changes to Chrono Boost, Mules, and Widow Mines revealing themselves after detonating, thus reducing the importance of early game detection, which allows Protoss players to take a third earlier and more easily. With that line of thinking and TvP in mind, we're looking to make this change for the following reasons. To encourage more dynamic gameplay in TvP. First, we believe Widow Mines naturally lend themselves to more multi-pronged tactics and drop play over their siege tank counterparts. In addition, because of the increased strain placed on observer placement, we believe this change will create more openings for Terrans to drop in general. To put indirect economic pressure on Protoss by increasing... bullet point 2. To put indirect economic pressure on Protoss by increasing the number of potential Terran openers and putting strain on their defenses across multiple bases. We believe this change would encourage more thoughtful positioning of Stalkers, as well as force earlier photon cannons, both of which detract from the power of the Protoss' primary army. See, even Blizzard agrees, Stalkers are bad units. To help ease the transition of 2-2 infantry upgrades. Now more is So summary is Widow Mines, you need detection earlier. This seems like one of those things that will have a pretty significant difference in TvZ though. I want to just talk shortly and then talk about all the changes. Like, it's very hard to make a change to a relatively core unit without affecting the other matchups. Widow Mines, like, people go Hellbat Rush. Like, you can go Hellbat Rush, boom, Invisimines. So here's the distinction, by the way, is Drilling Claws will make them burrow faster. So they're still going to burrow at that slow speed, but they will not be revealed after shooting, is the key point. Which means harder to clean up, especially for maybe a lower tech Zerg army. Once they research the Drilling Claws upgrade after getting an armory, then you have the... that's this technical diagram. Then they burrow that quickly, but still, the important point is the detection required after they burrow. So, this is something that the more I think about it, the more I think it affects TvZ than TvP, but let's move on. We'll get to all of it. Zerg. Queen. Anti-air weapon range decreased from 8 to 7. Say it ain't so! Times have been good, Brenda. But the good times can't last forever. The Queen's increased anti-air range was introduced at a point in the game when defending both Liberators and range-upgraded Liberators were a concern in the early game. With both map design tightening up to account for Liberators and ranged-upgraded Liberators receiving one less range, now might be a good time to revert this change to empower early-game air harassment from the other races. Our biggest concern is how instrumental large numbers of queens, or harems, or knitting crews, as they are known, are at dealing with battlecruiser openers, which did not exist in the past. How true that is. However, if this becomes an issue, our current thinking is that we'd prefer to address it from the battlecruiser side than the queen side. Okay. Baneling. Centrifugal hooks no longer grants banelings plus 5 HP. In other news, for many of you, did you know baneling speed granted plus 5 HP? Well, it did. Centrifugal hooks cost decreased from baneling speed. Oh my god. Baneling speed decreased from 150 to 100. Similarly, banelings originally gained plus 5 HP at a time when Zergs were struggling in the mid-game. Fast forward to today, where the most common piece of feedback we received from both Terran and Protoss players is the strength of a baneling in a variety of roles. You mean a unit that literally comes rolling in, and all you have to do is A-move it while everybody's panicking to micro out of the way? Is strong, and also drop. Anyways, internally we considered a variety of options to adjust either the baneling or the units that interact with the baneling in more targeted ways. But because the feedback that we received was that the baneling was generally so strong, we decided to take a more generalized approach. An initial feedback from pro players, a concern brought up was the difficulty of holding on to 4th bases against a 3-base Terran bio push with this change. As the feedback surrounding baneling centers on their strength over the course of a long game, rather than an initial power spike, we'd like to try decreasing centrifugals' hooks' baneling speed's cost to mitigate this concern. That's a big nerf. That is 50 banelings plus 5. That's 250 less HP. And also the way they interact with Storm and Widow memes. Not really Widow memes, because if it hits it, it's going to kill it anyways. But siege tanks. But don't worry, you're going to get a 50-50 discount. That's a big nerf. Is it justified? Maybe. Infester. In other news that nobody asked for. Please, guys. Please. We beg of you. Someone. Just one time. In a real game. Just try it. Like Cyril, you've been in the late game. You've had 14 infestors. You got 9,700 minerals and 5,600 Vespine gas. You got 6 bases. And you still did not research Microbial Shroud against carriers. It's like a organized boycott. So guess what? At some point, one of you is going to misclick this ability. In general, when trying to craft novel abilities, Brood War, we try to tune them towards being powerful. However, with the perception of Zerg last year, we tries to be more... I'm sorry, I got some microbial growth in my throat. This change is one further step we'd like to take towards ungating the power behind Microbial Shroud. And we're open to future alterations should we see the need. The big issue with Microbial Shroud is not that ground units... Like, the big issue with ground units fighting against air is spellcasting. It's Storm. It's mostly Storm. Maybe there's a scenario against the battle cruisers we don't see. Technically, I guess if you do it against Liberators, they might take 3 hits to kill Hydras. So Microbial Shroud reduces the air to ground... Okay, follow me. I'm going to try to explain it as concisely as possible. Microbial Shroud. You put a bunch of goop on the ground, over the top, like a canopy... Oh, okay. You put a shroud over a bunch of units, like a blinding cloud, but it's red. But, unlike a blinding cloud, the units under that take half damage to air, not no damage. They take half damage from air-to-ground attacks. That includes things like Liberator shooting, battle cruisers, carrier interceptors. It does not include oracles. It does not include storm, disruptors, stuff like that. So it reduces air-to-ground damage inside of the shroud. For I don't know, like about the same as blinding. This is a shroud. Who knows? Okay, somebody do it. I don't. Creep tumor. Armored tag removed. Addendum. Creep tumors were armored. Light tag added. They've slimmed down. This experimental change is intended to promote interactivity with creep. It targets adepts, oracles, and hellions, and puts greater importance on the creep to defend their creep tumors. On the Zerg to defend their creep tumors. And this is one of the changes we're more interested in the feedback for. And especially curious how much it would impact the creep clearing minigame, aka Do It or You're Dead, for Terran and Protoss. Minigame. Do you like living? How On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you enjoy not being dead? Terran player. Like, how important is that to you? I like this. I like this change. Because the vast majority of units that could clear creep efficiently do extra damage to light. Oracles, Hellions, Adepts, all the ones they said. I think this is a cool... Of all the changes, this one I'm like, I never thought of that. One, I never thought of creep tumors as more than... well, creep tumors. It's a cool change. Well. So, summary is, big slap to banelings. We got the Queens reined in a bit. The Infestor, Notice Me Senpai, and Creep Tumors. Oh, okay. But we're going to talk about how these interact, and then Protoss. One moment. I was working with the Blizzard Balance team, and we were working really hard. I've got some. Just 1 sec. All right, so here are my notes from our meetings. For Protoss defense, we talked about Nexus overcharge. Already done that. Okay. Pylon overcharge. That's gonna be a no. Mothership core. That's gone. Shield battery was good. Okay, but magnifique. Okay. Now, on the Nexus, we have added battery overcharge. So, the effect is overcharges a target shield battery, increasing its shield restoration and causing it to regenerate 100 energy. So, it costs 75 energy, has a 0-second cooldown, and has a range of 8. So they were obviously inspired by SOS's proxy Nexus build. I'm sure Florencio and Parting already have some ideas. This addition is intended to generally reinforce Protoss's defender's advantage and help Protoss players stabilize in PvP, both on 2 and 3 bases. The initial numbers for this ability were specifically designed with PvP and proxy robo builds in mind. As a testament to the strength of this ability, a Stalker being restored by an overcharged battery will often survive over 7 volleys from a typical 4 Stalker, 1 immortal poke off of robotics, up from 2 when compared to an unchained shield battery. This is where you really got to provide like pictures or a GIF or something. This allows a defending player with 2 Nexi to leverage their Nexus energy as a key resource to defend against aggressive attacks, which means you're going to have to manage your energy, granting them the leeway to build fewer batteries, and providing them with time to reposition their units while the opponent bounces back and forth between their main and natural... Wait, what? Why is the opponent bound... Okay. Against typical 2-3 base aggression in PvP, we see this ability as a powerful form of defender's advantage, effectively quadrupling the effectiveness of the shield battery. Still has counterplay in the form of killing the shield battery, sieging the Protoss base, backing off, or EMP. We're also aware that this new ability will draw some obvious comparisons with Pylon Overcharge, but we'll believe there are 2 key differences. First, unless you get extremely creative, you will not be able to offensively batter. Extremely creative. You will not be able to offensively battery overcharge rush your opponent. Alright, everybody excited for the new build? Second, defending harass, especially Terran drops, will require additional commitment, both in the form of units in position to help support the battery and the investment of building the battery itself. Of all the changes, we're looking the most for testing and feedback. Oh, plenty of testing and feedback, especially since you'll see the changes coming up. How we should tune the numbers, etc., etc. Oracle! Here we go. Revelation energy cost decreased from 50 to 25. Revelation cooldown increased from 2 to 10 seconds. Revelation duration increased from 30 to 15 seconds. So you can do it more, but also for less. This redesign of the Revelation ability is intended to grant it improved utility for clear and creep tuners. There are many subtle implications with this redesign, but a key one we're looking at for how much more effective Revelation will be at detecting Widowmines, Banshees, and Dark Templar. As a precaution, we preemptively increase the cooldown in order to make it more difficult for a single Oracle to detect multiple spread-out cloaked units. This change also interacts directly with our proposed Widowmine changes, and we're hoping the net result falls in favor of the Widowmine. Bias! Finally, we'll be flagging this change as one we're likely looking for feedback on and likely to tweak. The more I think about it, the more interesting that is. But we're gonna... And then feedback range is increased from 9 to 10. When we ask professional level Protoss players why they're reluctant to go into the late game, the most common response is that the feedback abduct interaction currently favors Zerg. We believe increasing feedback range to 10 is the healthiest way to balance out this interaction, as it would allow High Templar to more effectively zone out Vipers whose abduct range is 9. In the past, we would have been cautious about bringing feedback range closer to EMP round range, but with the new enhanced shockwaves upgrade, we feel more comfortable making this change. When it goes live, check it out. Okay. Summary. Interesting. I like... Okay, I'm just... First, the things I think are just... Yeah, Queen anti-air weapon range. Okay, deal. I'll give you that. I'm just going to give you an up-down, and then maybe with context. We'll take it from the top. Widowmines. So, I do feel this is going to affect Terran versus Zerg a lot more than it's being described as. Because think about... Apparently, if you lose the armory, they lose their invisibility, but that's not, like, sniping the armory isn't a real strat that is any better than actually killing Widowmines. But with the creep changes, alongside the Widowmine changes, it feels... I don't know, an armory isn't that expensive, and it also is very useful. Like, a lot of TvZ openers add an armory in quicker than TvP openers. So, like, getting an armory in TvP right now is like, oh, that guy's getting an armory quick. What a crazy build. In TvZ, it's like, oh, it's a Hellbat push. But now it could just be invisible Widowmines, which... I have a feeling that Zergs are going to be dealing with this more than Protoss. At least have more difficulty. Especially like with Queen anti-air range, slightly less. Drops are more effective. Not like it's not that much, but having a Spore in the mineral line is still fine to see the Widowmines, but we're talking about like early pushes and stuff too. Maybe you don't have a bunch of Overseers, or maybe you do, but that you don't have Baneling speed yet, which is also not as good. It feels, one, a little confusing, and two, I just don't like Widowmines that much in general. Widowmines do not feel like much of a... There are ways you can micro them. I think my hesitation on this one is more of a, I don't really like the Widowmine becoming a dependent unit. I like tanks being a unit, because like the difference between a player who manages their tanks and target fires well, especially in mid-game pushes, is huge. Whereas with Widowmines, it kind of sometimes feels like luck of the draw. Like maybe Raynor can split his lings 47 times a second, but not like even then. I don't know what I would do, like, because the reasons to do this, they described. Like, let's look at it from this angle. The reason is Terran players feeling behind economically in Terran versus Protoss, and also siege tank pushes feeling one-dimensional. So, I agree. Yes, this will open up more options. Widowmines are good, especially against heavy gateway styles that involve, like, a whole bunch of charge lots, which is not uncommon now. Widowmine drops they're not non-existent, but they're definitely more rare than they were, say, last year. I'm trying to think about, like, are there any other angles here? I think we're kind of working around the Widowmine ideal. We'll have to see how it plays out. I'm not a huge fan. Like, this isn't Brood War, despite how close we're getting to it. Just make it a spider mine, okay? It needs detection, or it kills you, but then it's gone. I don't know. But put the widow mines in the Hellions. Let them put the widow mine. I don't like that the widow mine stays around. Honestly, I would rather have spider mines, but I think we're a little late at this point for that. Like, I like that the spider mine is like a huge, like, dangerous thing, but one shot and it's done, or taken out, it's done. Like, I don't... This is a big shift. Like, widow mines are back, baby. Maybe it won't be that big. Maybe people will learn to use detection. I'm hesitant on this one at best. The Queen anti-air weapon range, I'll give you that. Banelings with 5 less HP. So it's about the interaction with units like siege tanks. Before, Banelings with speed and +1 armor wouldn't get one shot by the splash damage of a siege tank. Now they will, because it does 35 damage a hit, if I'm not mistaken, against non-armored units. Like, Banelings will always be one shot by siege tanks. Effectively all the time. It doesn't change any of the splash. I'm going to look this up. I'm going to make sure I'm not making things up. Tanks deal 40 damage. That's not... Attack 2, siege mode. Bonus 30 versus armor. Damage 40. What? I could have sworn my banelings... Oh, they do splash in a... They do a splash damages, and some take more and some take less depending on how close the splash is. That's what I'm talking about. Like, if it's near the center of the radius, but on the outer radius. I don't know. We'll have to see what it looks like. But it'll definitely make it easier. There was some math on that at one point. Anyways, with 5 less HP on Banelings, I don't think you make that up by having a slightly lower cost. Maybe people will go lurkers more often. Honestly, I'm okay. Straight up, like, Zerg has been overperforming. And you might be like, well, that's just because they have the better players. That's why they win.
Oh, you're not bad because they win.
That is Artosis making the same argument. But, like, especially ZvP... it just feels like, and this is what players... I've really struggled to find ZvPs. So I'm just going to talk... I'm going to do an aside for 1 minute. Just let me go for a minute. On YouTube, I want to find good games for the fans. On the stream, then people are probably going to watch for hours anyways, if they're watching. But on YouTube, like, if you've watched a few mediocre games like this guy doesn't know... And I pick out the best games to put on YouTube, like one a day, because otherwise YouTube hates you. It's like, don't spam. But also, don't stop posting, because we need ads. I struggle to find ZvPs. Unless it's like Cyril versus Neeb, which was a okay series, but it's Cyril versus Neeb. Terran versus Protoss, Terran versus Terran, and Terran versus Zerg. Seeing a common. Also Protoss versus Protoss. Zerg versus Protoss, it's hard to find a game that feels like it's back and forth. And that is an issue. And banelings are a big part of that issue, as well as the lack of ability for Protoss to defend, especially if they want to move their army on the map. So, I'm okay. Like, I feel like that's a bit much, but it might be just fine. This one. Like, players will adapt. I feel like lurkers are heavily underexplored as they are right now, even though a lot of people are using them. And the creep tumor thing, these are the type of things I really like. It's not like less HP, less damage, more HP, more damage. It's like, I guess this is technically that, but who was thinking about creep tumor light tags? We're just skipping by the infestor like everyone else does. I really like this, actually. Like, this makes a lot of sense to me. Harass units should be, like, their specialty is being efficient in small numbers and pressuring, ideally, a Zerg. And this allows them to actually do that. So, I like that change. That's a strong thumbs up for me. Did that creep tumor health total matter that much? Actually, yes. Like, if there were 4 or 5 creep tumors in a scan, and you have, like, 4 Hellions and a Reaper, you're not going to get all of them. Unless they're all lined up, you weren't going to get all of them. Now you will. Doesn't sound like a lot, but when the creep really starts spreading out, like when you're maybe 6-7 minutes into the game, the creep's starting to get towards the halfway mark in the map. Well, there you go. So that one's a good thumbs up from me. Battery overcharge, the more I think about it, the issue is with PvP, Protoss units are very strong, as mentioned. Like, having Protoss units is very strong. They're designed to be strong, even against other Protoss units. And I think the battery overcharge, even though, back to the... even though they needed something. They needed... Like, a big issue with Protoss is... Now, let's talk about against Terran. In the games we see against Terran. A lot of the time, maybe there's a relatively early push, like a siege tank push or something, on your third that you hold, but there's a harassment or something else that does damage and you lose 12, 14 probes, and suddenly you're really struggling to get anything going. With say, a battery overcharge, then you have 2 stalkers in your main, they're actually able to defend against... Like, I'm pretty sure this means that 2 stalkers will beat a Liberator, even if they're within range. Like, with battery overcharge. Stuff like that, right? So, that... They talked about how stalkers are mediocre units and need to be used to, like, reposition and stuff. I have no idea if this is going to help PvP. Is PvP beyond help? Maybe. It's possible. It's fun. It's fun. Most of the time. Sometimes it's sad. I'd like to get... Florencio's here. Thank you for stepping in, Florencio. What a convenient timing. But if you could summarize this part. With its shield battery overcharge, unless you get extremely creative, you will not be able to offensively battery overcharge rush your opponents. Any thoughts on that? And also, I like the revelation change. What is going on? Florencio has not seen the balance changes yet. The Oracle, the revelation changes are cool. This will benefit players who are on top of their oracles and microing them and actively using them. And players who don't take care of them or are lazy with them don't get the benefit. They get punished, which is fine at the higher level. And the High Templar feedback range, this makes sense as well. I don't know if they even mentioned it, but like a year ago, I don't know if it wasn't this year, I think it was the year before. The feedback was nerfed, so instead of doing 1 damage per energy, it only does half damage. So like if it has 100 energy, it does 50 damage. This removed the ability for feedback to actually kill things like ghosts and infestors and medevacs reliably. Before, you go pop, 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 and down go all the medevacs and ghosts and all that. Now feedback is more of a deterrent and a detriment. It doesn't really kill units. So I think there's no reason. Honestly, this probably should have been done with the feedback nerf, but Florencio says, "Oh, so my Nexus Rush got stronger." SOS and Florencio are going to benefit a lot from this. When Templars are... Yeah. I think... And this is another thing that mostly benefits higher level players. Overall, for the patch, we can give Protoss more. The big issue with Protoss, in my opinion, is still Warp Gate. It's still that gateway units have to be bad. Because at any point you might be warping a dozen of them or more into your opponent's main. So you cannot buff gateway units to an extent that they just become so ridiculous they're impossible to deal with if a warp prism ever gets in. I've talked about that before. I'm not going to bring that up again. Honestly, I feel like the battery overcharge, cautiously optimistic, Oracle Revelation, I like it. High Templar feedback seems overdue. As for the Creep Tumor, nice. Microbial Shroud, LOL. Microbial Shroud... Give it the thing that Stepman has. Give, like, Reverse Neural Parasite. Like, and Stepman in co-op, let's do this. It has, like, they do a Neural Parasite, but on your own units that heals a unit. And it makes it, like, attack faster as well. Like, what if you could reverse Neural Parasite, like, you got a power cord, and your Infestor could buff your, like, Broodlord. Or your Corruptors or something. I don't think we're going to get that. Yeah, go play Stepman. Broodlord Overcharge. The Baneling nerf is probably justified, though it feels like a lot. The anti-air weapon range, I am morally against, but practically understand. And then the Widowmine... Very mixed on that. I don't know how that's going to shake out. So. Well, hopefully you enjoyed my breakdown. I try to give you the information. I try to give you my take. Hopefully you found it either enlightening, entertaining, or at least disheartening. Make sure to tell me which race is now deleted from the game, which race will win everything or continue to win everything. To like and subscribe and leave all your illustrious comments. I look forward to playing the test patch, and I'm glad we've got some feedback here. So, thank you for watching. Good luck.